Welcome to our review of the Esso Ultron Vento VR6 Challenge. The opening round of the series took place at Alton Park in Cheshire, and pole position had gone to Chris Boone, while alongside of him, Matt Johnson. Neville Hay tells the story of the race.
Matt Johnson we've got here on the outside as he lets the clutch in and heads off towards Old Hall Corner. Moves to the centre to block anybody who had any ideas about coming up one way, but moves out of the way there of number 8, Tim Sugden. And Sugden and Boone touch, not once but twice. So Sugden has the lead, and Matt Johnson gains a place as a result of all that. Has a look at the inside. Didn't get it. Boone's still up there. Behind Andy Kramer in number 2 there, we saw quite well placed. And keep an eye out too for 55 Dave Pinkney, who started a long way back but is very quick. Out through Ireland, into Shell. This is this long, loping hairpin, which is actually quicker than it looks. And you can see there, over 200 brake horsepower of Vento. Of course, there's a bit of understeer there as they push their way through that one, and push being the word for understeer, if you like. That's number 20, Dave Green, number 20 there in the grey car. And we're with Tim Sugden. You could say a bit lonely out there in the lead, but I don't think he's going to be lonely for too long. Sugden down the hill. You can see him glancing up at the mirror to see what's happening behind, down to second gear. And you should glance in the mirror as well. Up to 4th place comes the blue car there of Dave Pinkney. Up towards Druids. And this has the makings of a very fine battle. Matt Johnson right with him still. Boone in 3rd place following that moment. Behind Boone it's Pinkney. And none of this quartet of cars has a huge lead. In fact, you've got to go 2 more back. Looks to me as if at least 2 more back as number 6 goes through there, Phil Sharp. Look at the inside by Johnson, didn't come off. Pinkney three-wheeling it round there. Johnson desperately trying to close the gap. Looks at the inside once again. Boone right behind him. There's Colin Wells, and behind Colin Wells it's Mark Grady. And that's the top 6. So Sugden leads, Matt Johnson 2nd. Boone is in 3rd place, or at least is trying now to get into 2nd place, but has lost out because he's put it on the grass and is about to lose it in the biggest possible way, and he does. Hits the tyre wall, and that's effectively him out of the contest. So now Sugden with Johnson behind him, and it must therefore be that in 3rd place, that we can't see him yet, is the blue car. As over the curb there goes Johnson onto the grass, and that I reckon now is 3rd place for him as through has come Dave Pinkney to take 2nd place. Colin Wells gets himself into 3rd place. Mark Grady gets himself into 4th place, and Matt Johnson has just gone from 2nd to 5th in one easy lesson. We see that in replay, and this is where it all started to go wrong, first and foremost for Boone, who gets himself on the grass there, and there's nowhere to go once you're on that grass. He gets sideways, tries to correct it, and clips that tyre wall, which brings him to a very, very horrid halt very quickly. Then we see over the curb there, Matt Johnson get it all wrong going into Fulston's. He ends up on the grass coming out, does his little bit of auto-crossing, and while he's doing it, 2 cars come by and he's getting himself together, and a 3rd comes by, so now he's 5th. Now all this has allowed Dave Pinkney to get his act together, and all of a sudden he is now the man who is challenging Tim Sugden for the lead, and Sugden, with loads of experience, is finding that Dave Pinkney is not an easy chap to dislodge from your tail. Pinkney driving very smoothly. Colin Wells a good 3rd, but not really in touch with right behind him Grady, and Johnson desperately trying to make up some ground on the 2 up ahead and at least get himself back into 4th or 3rd before the end of the race. We'll have to wait and see. Touches the curb there, passes the scene of the demise of Chris Boone. Pinkney, however, has seemingly left things alone at the moment and is watching Tim Sugden sort his way through Fulston's, goes over Hilltop, and this is one of the favourite places to have a go, coming down here to the reprofile Knickerbrook, which is much sharper and is a right and left. Under braking you can often do it. He's under braking, he's on the inside, nearly gets his nose nipped off, but you can sometimes encourage the chap who you're trying to pass to get offline. Tim Sugden is perhaps a little bit depressed by that and holds his finger up saying, no, no, naughty boy, but I don't think there's the slightest bit of difference. And now sets about in fourth gear, coming up towards Druids, will I think drop to third for the first apex. The second apex, come out near to the grass there, just avoiding the curb, and then we've got this other braking area here, coming into Old Hall, where once again you can see there was some thought there in Dave Pinkney's mind that there might be room to do something, but he now comes up to another place, and when you look at some circuits where you can't overtake, this is one way you can. Sugden glances up, keeping an eye all the time to see which way Pinkney's going to go, hoping that he can be just in the place he wanted to be, and he wasn't that time, and through came Pinkney and snatched the lead, and Sugden's gear change up into fourth there was indicative of how he felt about it. He realised full well that he had been, put it nicely, sold the dummy and had left the space on the inside and had lost the lead, and now has the job of trying to force an error on the part of the new leader, Dave Pinkney, who timed that manoeuvre to absolute perfection and didn't make the mistake of coming in so fast that when he came out he threw it all away again. Matt Johnson has caught up meanwhile with Mark Grady, who bounced over the curb there and got away with it, which Johnson didn't, of course. And he, no doubt, will be looking for a way perhaps to improve on his position as he comes down here. Grady, in the meantime, is determined to try and do something about a very defensive drive that's going on up ahead of him there, as Colin Wells takes the optimum line, throws it away, and looks for the one that's going to give him a chance to hold on to his place. Up comes, as you can see, a manoeuvre there which was desperately close. I think they did touch wings, but up comes Grady to take the place, and Grady gets up and past Colin Wells. Johnson goes over the curb. Johnson would desperately love, has a look there at the inside as they come up to lodge, but decides better of it. And again you saw the tight line, the apex being taken by Colin Wells, as up to the line and past the flag goes a very happy Dave Pinkney to win from, certainly, I think, a rather dissatisfied Tim Sugden. Matt Johnson didn't make as much ground as he wanted to, finished fifth, with Grady and Colin Wells ahead of him. So Dave Pinkney then scoring maximum points there in a fine victory with a fine manoeuvre that took over the lead of the race. What's he feel about it?
You had to work hard as well. Mark Yates prepared the car fantastically. We had a bit of a problem in qualifying. We were the quickest car here yesterday, but we made a mistake on the tyres in qualifying, ended up sixth on the grid. But yeah, sixth to first. Great.
Sunny conditions greeted the teams when they arrived at Donington Park in Leicestershire for the second round of the series. Pole position this time going to Matt Johnson, former champion in Clios and Fiestas, now turning his attention to Volkswagens. Alongside of him, the returnee to the series, Dave Pinkney, who put in such an impressive performance at Oulton Park. And back to row two, Colin Wells and Tim Sugden, the former touring car driver. The winner almost certain to come from one of these four. But remember, Pinkney came from sixth at Oulton Park. Let's rejoin Neville.
No problems at the start. VR6 with its V6 engine producing an enormous amount of power, driving through the front-wheel drive, and the booted Golf providing some very exciting racing indeed. As we look at the back of Dave Pinkney, he's looking out the back, watching the battle behind with Sugden, fighting it out as they come down the hill there with Colin Wells. We're with Wells, who gets all sideways on the grass, demolishes a sign, goes across the road. They all missed him, but he's in the sand trap, and I think we're going to miss him for the rest of the race. And that's Dave Brodie on the grass there, as through come the top three, still in the order of Johnson, Pinkney and Sugden, and Brodie should know better than to make a mistake like that with all the experience that he's got. Obviously something went very sadly wrong there. He's lost some ground. And here's another buzz in the back there. And sadly, that was Jane Cheffings who was shunted off by number 31. And that is Nico Tenkanen. I don't think the fit is going to be very popular. We look back again to that incident that saw the demise of Colin Wells. You can see the sign there. Well, Tom Wheatcroft will need another of those. And you can see how they all missed him and he missed them. Really quite unbelievable. And then we look again at this incident, which actually was nothing to do with the poor girl. Johnson, Pinkney, Sagden. That is number 1, Chris Boone, who's got a bit of work to do. As we watch out the back of Pinkney's car, see that he's got ahead of Sugden now, to the point where Sugden is no longer really able to challenge him. Remains to be seen whether he can catch up, as we see the tractor trying to remove from the sand there the luckless Colin Wells car. So it's all down now to Pinkney. Can he close the gap on the man up ahead, Matt Johnson? Matt Johnson hanging on in there, really showing that he means it. Comes from Middlesex, company director, 29 years old. And the flag's still out there. That is Phil Sharp, with a little help, I think, from Ingram Legg, departing from the race. That wasn't quite so blatant as the last manoeuvre that we saw, which resulted in somebody going off into the sand. And here is Chris Boone desperately trying to close the gap, and I think he was in trouble before Ingram Legg appeared on the scene and helped him. Out front, good battle here. Through on the inside comes Woody Moore, the jockey. Woody Moore, nice move that, to snatch away Chris Boone's place. Woody Moore, I think, can feel very proud of that one, 39 years old. Milton Company Director is his proper title. With these two having a terrific fight. Moore just ahead with the first 3 through, and this is the real battle in this race, with these two setting about each other like there's no tomorrow. Looking at the inside, no. Look at the outside, no. Taking his line quite properly, Moore there went to the outside. As we watch Johnson come through, with Pinkney raising the dust in his efforts to stay with him and to catch him, but he hasn't succeeded. And the battle quite close as they come to the hairpin here. Out of the hairpin, under acceleration. Each car cleanly away, no real ground gained. Into Goddard's. Heavy on the brakes. You can see that rear wheel cocking up in the air as we watch the leader going through. Second place man up towards the checkered flag. And it's Matt Johnson who is going to take the win from Dave Pinkney in second place. Tim Sugden in third place. Moore still fighting it out to the line with Boone. But that's the way they finished, in fact. That's the top 5. And in the championship, well, it's very early days yet, but Pinkney has an 8-point lead from Johnson. Sugden on the same points, then Woody Moore and Mark Grady.
Donington Park was a double-header, and that meant 2 opportunities for the drivers to perform in front of the crowds. The grid for the second race saw Johnson and Pinkney on the front row again. Pinkney's opportunity to avenge that previous win, while Sugden started just behind, and alongside of him, Willie Moore.
Dave Pinkney didn't make a very good start there. Coming up towards us, still a very tight field. And into the lead, it's Matt Johnson hanging on in there. Sugden on the inside there of Pinkney, struggling through up into third place. We're with Colin Wells, who's got some work to do. Well back in the pack, as you can see. Front wheel drive. 6-cylinder V6 engine, bags of power, and the road holding on these cars now well and truly sorted as they come into their third season. And they really do make a purposeful noise, well worthwhile keeping an eye to. Well, still trying desperately to find a way up there. Hasn't succeeded in doing it yet. Having to wait till I think he gets on the straight here into the braking area as they come down towards this next right-hander. Double apex. might have the chance of making a place here, as down towards us for the first time. Matt Johnson in the lead, Sugden tucked up behind him. Through on the inside there came Pickney to snatch third place from Willie Moore. Off onto the grass. Back onto the track again goes number 20, David Green. Lost himself a couple of places as a result of that, and one of the men who's going to profit is Wells, who we saw was struggling a bit. As up come the leaders, the top three still the same. Pickney in third place, the meat in the sandwich, the black car of Sugden. But out in the lead still, it's number 16, Matt Johnson. Johnson, who shone with Rovers last year, is 29 years old, comes from Ruislip in Middlesex, company director. With Sugden there, losing his second place to Pinkney. Pinkney came through on the inside there. And Dave Pinkney, a remarkable manoeuvre there, beautifully judged. Brought it off superbly. He's 38 years old. Calls himself an entrepreneur. Well, that was certainly an entrepreneurial move on his part to displace Tim Sugden, the 32 years old Leeds professional racing driver, who of course drove in the British Touring Car Championships. We rejoin Wells. Wells still some way back down the pack, not making the sort of ground I think they'd hoped to make. Quite a gap between the leader, number 16, Matt Johnson, and Pinkney hanging on in there. Two wheels round there for most people. Haulage contractor Mark Grady hauling himself up a bit there as we rejoin Wells, who really isn't making any ground at all. Long string of cars ahead of him. He's not getting any nearer to the guy in front. Giving himself a lot of work to do, and it's not coming off at the moment. Might get a bit under braking here, let's see. Always they appear to make a little ground under braking, but of course once everybody else starts to accelerate as they bump over the curb, there's Grady once again. Intends to stretch out. Grady trying to get himself between two cars. Nearly didn't come off. We can see that battle just ahead of Wells, and I think he made a place there. Yes, he did. The man who suffered was Andy Kramer. And Andy Kramer tries to come back. He's on the outside. Wells tucked in behind them. So there are three places here that it's possible that Wells could make dice for the inside. There's never room. A brush of wings with Kramer. Kramer loses out. He's onto Grady's tail. Wells makes a place. Wells looking at the inside as they come up now towards Redgate. As the four cars go through in the lead, we look back for that battle. Here it comes now. Dive through on the inside by Grady. Sharp tries to catch him as they come out, pulls alongside as they go down through the Craner curves. Wells has a watch at all this. His position starting further back, of course, was due to his off in the first race. And he's watching them both. They come to the old hairpin. Both brake late. Dive on the inside by Grady, who touches Sharp. Sharp gets a bump up the backside there. Partly his own fault. I think he came out slowly. Grady could do nothing much about it. And Grady, in fact, eased off. Gets it back together, loses his place to Wells. Wells goes wide there. He's having a big moment all of his own. Just gets it back under control. And I would expect that we're not going to see Grady very far behind him, poking his nose through again. Grady and Wells coming out of the corner side by side. Now they come down here to the S's. Really, Wells should have the advantage, but the advantage is on speed on the outside at the moment to Mark Grady. They both brake very, very late. They both go wide. They both go over the grass. They both come off it. And they arrive in precisely the same order that they were, with Wells now trying on the inside. That is a dive by number 10, Dave Brodie, to try and move up past Ingram Legg. Didn't come off. And here is Brodie having another look again. Here's another man who had an incident on the previous race. Dave Brodie, with a lot of experience, 50 years old, director of the BRDC, driven saloon cars for more years than he or I care to remember. We look back and see Grady still holding off a very determined Colin Wells, but Wells has with him still another little problem. But let's look once again as through goes Dave Pinkney, getting a little bit closer perhaps to the leader. Here is Wells, there is Grady ahead of him, at the moment with a respectable distance. Into and out of the old hairpin, puts it on the dirt, on the grass. They both go wide, but that manoeuvre could very well mean that Grady is going to slow himself down again. Those tyres get dirty when they're hot. The grit sticks to them, you lose a bit of adhesion. You don't necessarily just lose it round a corner, you lose it coming out, and you can see he came out wide again there, and Wells has a look at the inside, has a look at the outside, tries to go all the way around the outside there, then goes to the inside on the apex, and will try to go down the straight and keep that position. Now, on maximum speed, we saw that Wells had a slight disadvantage last time, and he has a slight disadvantage this time as well, so Grady can come back and take the optimum line if he doesn't outbrake himself again. And he does. The brakes are locked up. Over the grass, comes out all ragged. Wells much neater this time. Is able to avoid the tail of the car, comes through on the inside. Now, can he stay there? So Colin Wells at number 4, 37 years old, Shrewsbury Motor Trader. Now has behind him Andy Kramer, but Kramer being displaced by an equally determined Mark Grady, who wants to make up for that error. Kramer dives for the inside. Grady has to give best. Slots himself in the middle of all that. Meanwhile, Nico Tukanen, 21 years old, Finnish driver from Helsinki, in the red car, also joins in. And Grady comes up past, and in front of Kramer. A bit of nudging going on there between two cars. I think we'll treat that with a little bit of ignorance as we watch the leading battle now well and truly joined. 4th place Chris Boone, but the real battle up ahead, it was closer than that. You saw for a moment Pinkney have a little bit of a slide coming out there, lost himself a bit of ground because he was right on the tail of this man who's dominated the race at the front, Matt Johnson. And Johnson, 29 years old, Ruislip Company Director, hanging on in there with 2 wheels there. Pinkney hanging on behind. That's the first 4 into Melbourne. Out of it again. There's 3rd man Sugden. 4th man Boone. Dave Brodie in 5th place. We're with Wells. That didn't sound to me as if he made that change as neatly as he might have done. Certainly lost a place there. Lost 2 places, in fact, as Tukanen came past him, and so did Grady. Tukanen puts it on the grass, however. Didn't help much. Grady back ahead of both of them. Tukanen now up there, coming in very, very quickly. Wells comes out, Tukanen in front of him. Line ahead now, down towards Redgate. And really Wells not close enough to them, I think, to make any difference this time. He's going to have to try and close it as they come in, get with them as they come down the hill, and see if he can worry them into any more errors as they go down through the Craner curves. This is absolutely flat, and I can assure you it feels very, very quick indeed. Meanwhile, this is the battle for the lead. You can see that Dave Pinkney is right with and challenging Matt Johnson. Johnson didn't give him any room on the inside there, but his efforts to keep the door closed came out rather wide. They both slowed a little. Onto the straight, absolutely nose and tail, less than a car's length in it. Sugden tucked up behind. Braking just slightly later. Pinkney right on the tail now of number 16, Matt Johnson. And Johnson going to have to drive tactically here as they come into Melbourne. So he comes in on a tight line, giving really Pinkney no choice but going round him. Hopes no doubt to get on the inside on the way out. He does. But that's the outside all the way into Goddard's. So into Goddard's. Pinkney noses ahead, but under braking, locked up there, sliding wide. 2 wheels on his wagon. Forced Pinkney to slow. They come up to the line. This is the last lap. This is the flag lap. Coming up to the line, they're side by side. The flag comes out, and that's as near a dead heat as I've ever seen. Here is Wells. That is Grady doing it again. All over the grass. About to lose that hard-won place. Wells comes up and past him. In front of Wells is Tukanen. Tukanen came in there, took the optimum line, comes out the quicker of the two. Wells tried to come up the inside. It didn't work for him, but it probably kept Grady behind until they come to this, the last corner. Again, driving defensively, Wells closes the gap but comes out very wide. Over the curb, and he loses the place on the line as they finish up now with Grady just ahead of Wells. And the timekeepers too agree that that was a dead heat between Johnson and Pinkney, leaving Sugden third, Boone fourth, and Winnie Moore up to fifth place. Pinkney now leads the championship by 7 points from Johnson, then it's Sugden, Moore and Chris Boone. And this is what you call a dead heat. Just watch these cars, up they come. And they are absolutely side by side. Here's the line there by the flag, and they really were absolutely dead heating it all the way up to the line. Timekeepers had it right.
Round 4 of the series, and this time Brands Hatch in Kent. As if to prove just how competitive the series was, Tim Sugden this time had put his car on pole position, relegating Johnson to second, Pinkney to third, and Brodie to fourth. Sugden knew if he was to stand a chance at the championship, this was the race where he had to win. So all eyes were on the black car. Keep an eye out too, though, for the red car on row 3 of Nico Tukanen, the Flying Finn. Let's rejoin Neville Hay.
Look out for Colin Wells in the yellow car. He also could be a front runner as they're away, with Sugden getting into the lead just from Johnson. Met Johnson holding him off, Brodie in fourth place. Dave Pinkney has a look for second. We're on board with Nico Tukanen. Been a naughty boy on one occasion this year, Nico, but anxious to go well, only 21 years old, following Colin Wells down the hill there. Wells comes up, has a good look at Dave Brodie on the grass. That was not a silly thing to do, or was it? Yes, it was. Takes himself and nearly takes the other two off. And he goes off into the bank with a fair amount of damage to the car, and I think that's his race run. So Tukanen now has got Brodie in his sights, who I think probably might have been slightly miffed by all that, and may have sustained some damage. Brodie locks up, Robert Ross comes through. Tukanen there collects himself back together again. And that, I think, is Brodie's race run. So in front, it's number 8, Tim Sugden, with behind Tim Sugden, and really going hard, second place man Johnson. Here is Tukanen trying to do something about Robert Ross, and in front of them both, in a good third place, but with some work to do, Dave Pinkney. Sugden, a career of mixed fortunes, was in the British Touring Car Championship, isn't any longer. Johnson, with not as much experience, but definitely determined to try and do something about this. Started motorsport back in '86, tried Ford 2000, Vauxhall Lotus, Renault Clio Cup, and even spent some time with BMW Motorsport Test Team before returning to the Fiesta Championship, which he won with 3 rounds in hand. Tukanen, 21-year-old, loses another place there. That was unfortunate, gave one away. Chris Boone came through there on the inside, sneaked up, and was through and past him before he could really work out what was happening. Boone, whose experience goes back to 1985 now, 11 years in racing. And Pinkney getting a little closer to that pair in front, with still Robert Ross in there, desperately trying to gain some ground, takes a different line coming into paddock, the optimum line, you could say, as Rita keeps the door closed, and Sugden has got to do that. This is Sugden with Johnson trying every way to go round him, and this will delay Sugden a little bit. It may allow Dave Pinkney to close up a little. It does, because he couldn't exit at optimum speed without risking the chance of sliding over into Johnson there. So Johnson really found himself slowing down, if you like, the leader, but also putting himself in peril now as Pinkney's come up now in third place right on their tail. So 3 cars pretty close together. Sugden, Johnson, Pinkney. These 3 go past the pits, absolutely nose and tail. Nothing in it between them. The 32 years old Sugden in the lead. 29 years old Johnson in second place. Pinkney, the oldest of the 3, 38 years old in third place. And Johnson there makes a magnificent move. The space was left on the inside, and he was through as Ross gets sideways. Ross goes off. Nico Tikkanen there catches a surprise Chris Boone. Goes round the outside. No, he doesn't. Boone doesn't want to know about that. So down the hill, and here we see Ross climbing out from underneath, and you can see what the underside of a Vento's like now as it sits upside down in the gravel trap. Let's see that again in replay. Was he touched? Yes, he was. I don't think Chris Boone had any really foul intentions there. He just went for a gap that wasn't really quite there, which sees, as you can see, a gentle roll, and Robert Ross out of the race. So Robert Ross out of the race, 24 years old Scotsman, a student, loses out. Tikkanen now setting about Chris Boone. Here are the first 3. And I can't see a mark there on the car of Chris Boone, so it's possible they didn't actually touch. I thought they did. Certainly was very close, and it was as a direct result of that manoeuvre that Ross rolled out, but it doesn't matter anyway, because as I've said, it was just one of those things. 2 on the inside, Pinkney desperately trying to hit Sugden there had a wicked slide as a result of a smack in the side there. Slid off, lost himself a lot of places. And Pinkney dropping back now as a result of that, because I think he too might have sustained some damage. Certainly Pinkney now has lost a couple of places. No question about that. Yet again, let's see what happened. It's just one of those things, I think. Pinkney goes for the inside there. Under braking, he starts to understeer. Also coming across him there was Sugden, and you can see from Sugden's car those tyres getting ever closer, and he just stopped short. So Tikkanen now sets about Chris Boone, because this is now a battle for second and third places. Pinkney having dropped back as a result of that incident. Nico Tikkanen looks at the outside. Goes for the apex there, comes out. Comfortably in front now, Johnson. I don't think anybody's going to get near him. Tikkanen, apart from getting out of the car and inviting him to pull over, hasn't yet found a way past Chris Boone. Up a gear, and that is Pinkney. That is Pinkney struggling round. As a result of that incident, you can see that the front of that car is deranged, and that is the reason for Pinkney's retirement. Nico Tikkanen, 21 years old. Helsinki, Finland is where he comes from, setting about to try and do something about that elusive second place in the bright red car. Hasn't yet found a way through, but it's certainly not for want of trying. Started karting in 1987, won his national championship 91. 94, won the Fiat Uno Turbo Championship in Finland. Also drove for Honda in the 24 hours at Nürburgring last year, and was a military policeman when he did his military service, which everybody has to do, in Finland. Setting about Chris Boone, 37 years old, company director from Painswick in Gloucestershire. A long-time competitor in this championship, has always been a front runner and a very determined driver as well. Barwell Bento Challenge, also tried Rover GTIs in the past. And a fierce competitor to try and displace Lapping number 11, Mark Nicol, in his first season, 22 years old. Comes from Alloway and Ayr, sales executive. And as a result of this battle, they are getting a little bit closer, I think, to Matt Johnson, although Johnson, to be fair, probably has backed off just a little bit without that amount of pressure on him. Very easy to do that, also easy to back off too much, and I'm pretty sure Matt won't do that. So here's Matt Johnson in front there with this battle going on behind him. Tyrkänen still hasn't found a way by. Desperately trying to find one. It's now or never, and it's never because the flag comes out. Johnson wins, Boone is second, Tyrkänen is third. So his chances, therefore, of altering that situation out the window. Tyrkänen very delighted with third place, would have liked to have been second. Phil Sharp finished fourth, Woody Moore finished fifth. A jolly good finish to a very close race. But Matt Johnson to tell us all about that fight for the lead at the front.
I got a reasonably good start, went into paddock around the outside of Tim, went into Druids, and thankfully I got away from Dave Pinkney and Dave Brodie and Colin Wells, who were fighting quite hard going up into Druids, and then they touched obviously through Bottom Bend. Thankfully I was just in front and didn't get involved with that. And the best thing for me is that obviously Dave Pinkney, who was leading the championship, didn't finish, and Tim Sugden dropped down to 6th with an incident with Pinkney again. So in terms of the championship, which is the most important thing, it's looking very good.
It is indeed, because he's got 17 points on Pinkney, with Sugden just 2 points behind. Then Willie Moore and Chris Boone coming up in 5th.
Donington Park, the venue for round 5. And with Matt Johnson having taken victory in 3 out of the previous 4 races, the pressure was now on Messrs Pinkney and Sugden. Pinkney really had to make amends for failing to score at Brands Hatch, and he did that in style at Donington.
They're away already. And look out for the blue car from pole position, Sugden in the black car on the outside. Number 11 there, Mark Nicol. As Sugden takes the lead down through the Craner curves into the old hairpin, Pinkney behind him. 36 going a bit wide, Brian Heary. Puff there from the grass as he went across it. Sugden leads, but on the inside of him, then a very, very good dive, and they rub door handles. There was a touch, I'm quite sure, between them there as Pinkney attempted to go through. Somebody hit the curb there very hard, and still Pinkney didn't make it. Johnson trying very, very hard to sort that out, Matt Johnson, and get himself up into second place. He's done it. Matt Johnson into second place, but look at this on the inside coming down there. Nico Tyrkänen desperately replaces Pinkney, almost got himself onto Johnson's tail but didn't quite make it. Tried again there, and Tyrkänen there on the outside line, not the place to be, unless you're Dave Brodie, in which case probably that was the safest place for him, still hanging on there in 5th place. Under braking, Tyrkänen there as drifting up with wheels locked on the inside. There's a touch between Johnson and Tyrkänen, but they both survived that perfectly all right. The weight of the cars, I think, taking care of something, and Andy Kramer with a big dent in the side is an indication of, I think, what happened in the first lap. We didn't quite see what happened there, but that's certainly the result of it. And Johnson then back in 3rd place, with Tyrkänen desperately trying to get through and past him. 35 some way back there is Frank Greenway, as we watch Sugden with Pinkney right behind him. Tim Sugden, who is a refugee from the British Touring Car Championship, still does a lot of testing in that area. Tyrkänen there trying to desperately get round the outside of Johnson, hasn't made it yet, but having problems of his own there. And that problem is number 36, Brian Heary, who gets past Tyrkänen and makes him think about that one as they rub door handles all the way down there. And certainly Dave Brodie probably feels the safest place is back there in 6th. Two wheels as he touches the curb there. Tyrkänen, 2 wheels on the grass, gets them off again, As a big challenge on the inside here, under braking, you can see he's setting himself up for that one. Dave Pinkney tries to get through, forces the erstwhile leader very wide there, and Sugden comes out in second place where once he was first. So Pinkney leads, Sugden is second. Into Goddard's. Sugden comes out right on the tail of the leader. Up to the line. But still hasn't succeeded in getting past him. Johnson now in a good third place. Heary into fourth place. And Tikkanen falling back. Certainly not a happy man at the moment. Back into Brody's clutches. Heary desperately trying to close the gap between himself and third place man Johnson, as is Sugden trying to displace Pinkney in the lead. Up now to the double apex, which can give you so much trouble. Coppice, a really difficult corner to really get the best out of if you get it wrong, and that is Tikkanen onto the grass, into the tyre wall, collects it back together again, having clipped the tyre wall, but comes out behind Dave Brody, and Brody thereby inherits fifth place. Sugden, you heard him touch the back there of Pinkney's car as he took the lead back when Pinkney went wide. They wrestled there at the chicane, and Pinkney there, I think, wondering what happens next. It's a hold on to second place that happens next, and he does. And Dave Brody watching all this, because the four so close together, anybody could take anybody off in this one. Huge understeer there. And four cars abreast as they come across the line. But just in the lead there is Pinkney. Pinkney just in the lead, with all the way down the road there, the battle going on between Heary and Sugden and Johnson. And Sugden went for a gap that wasn't there, almost took Heary off. Heary lost a place as a result of it. Really is some pretty rough, tough driving going on there, but it leaves Mats Johnson, then Sugden, then Heary, and then Dave Brody. You must be wondering if he wants to be there at all. Brody looking at this pair ahead of him, wondering what next they might pull. Has a look on the inside, puts two wheels on the curb, it's up on two wheels, comes back down again. And Dave Brody, who has got to be the senior man in the championship, don't even tell you otherwise, fighting all the way down here, and gets past Sugden to take third place. But Sugden comes back, because I think in the middle of all that, Brody missed a gear. Meanwhile, at the front, Pinkney leads. Johnson second. Now Heary back to third. Sugden fourth. Brody back to fifth. Brody lost himself a lot of time there when he missed a gear. Up to the line is Pinkney. Pinkney up to the line and across it with a respectable lead this time. And for the first time in this race, they've spaced themselves out of it. Heary, Sugden. And that is Dave Brody having a moment all of his own, and proving that a Volkswagen will come out of the kitty litter better than anything else I've seen do this year, but losing himself a lot of places as a result of it. $15 almost forgotten in all this is Robert Ross, recovered from his adventures at Brands Hatch. The 24-year-old Scotsman going very much better, but Heary now looking pretty comfortable in third place. Sugden well behind him. But Ross, I think, might be the man to challenge. Somebody looking at Sugden, it's got to be Ross. And I'd say that's once again to Cannon, who has come back. Here is Ross. Sugden comes across the road to defend the line. Up into the Melbourne hairpin goes the leader, Pinkney. Behind him goes Johnson. Up now towards the left-hander at Goddard's for the last time. Pinkney has got this one in the bag, providing he gets it round here. He does. Johnson, a good second, some way back. Waiting for third place man. And here's the battle for fourth, and Sugden is going to get it on the line, but not before he'd swerved across the road, and that might just have gone the other way. No, it didn't. Robert Ross finished fifth. There's confirmation of those results, but a great drive by Ross. Johnson, Heary and Sugden, the meat in his particular sandwich, even if it was sometimes a somewhat rough sandwich. Johnson now 12 points ahead of Pinkney. Sugden not so far behind. Then Boone and Willie Moore, who didn't feature in today's race.
After Donington Park, 2 more rounds took place at Alton Park and Brands Hatch. They were won by Dave Pinkney and Tim Sugden, respectively. That meant that they closed on Matt Johnson in the championship. Thruxton provided an opportunity for Johnson to re-establish himself and extend that lead.
The big challenge is going to come from Dave Pinkney. Dave Pinkney and Dave Brodie, who's never lost here. Pinkney, 39 years old, company director, has got the lead, and Sugden has to be satisfied with second. Behind number 16, Matt Johnson in third place. Brodie here gets a bump up the back and actually gives as good as he gets, but I'm wondering whether that affected the car in any way. Comes out here rather wide, and Brodie desperately trying to get up a place there. Gets alongside on the inside and tells somebody to move over, and I can't say that I blame him because that was his corner. He was up alongside. So Brodie into fourth place. Sugden's past Pinkney. Johnson's passing Pinkney. Pinkney's now third. Here comes Brodie, closing the gap all the time. Dave Brodie, 51 years old, company director, has a look. Door is closed. Not anymore. Up alongside 55 Pinkney and takes the place away. Brodie being squeezed a little bit there, still hasn't really made the place his own, but he succeeded in doing so now. Thank you very much, he says, or something like that. I think that's what he meant. And that's Sugden locking up, and Johnson the reason why. And Dave Brodie now up to third place, but in we've got Andy Kramer as Johnson has Sugden alongside him. And they've braked almost simultaneously there. Brodie getting himself out of line a little bit. Still in third place, still closing the gap on these three. Still ahead of Dave Pinkney. Still looking as if he's got the speed on the straight to catch them. Lining himself up there to have a look. Certainly brakes as late, if not later. He's right tight with them. And this is a tight battle between the VR6s, and don't they sound absolutely superb. Keep an eye out for number 6 there, Phil Sharp. This was the guy who gave a bit of trouble to Dave Brodie. Pinkney next up, Sharp behind him. And in case you're wondering who the other red car belongs to, that's our old friend Tukkanen. Nico Tukkanen, who's been, again, curiously off the pace a little bit here. Now, Johnson looks good. Sugden looks better. Brodie looks sideways. In front of him now is Dave Pinkney. And in and out of the pits again, Andy Kramer. And they've dropped Brodie, and it's Johnson versus Sugden as they come down towards Club, with Pinkney closing in behind them, and a long, long gap now before we see anybody else. So I think Brodie must have had a moment and held a few people up. He's not even in sight. So the top three set off down towards the complex. Absolutely nose and tail. Johnson in the lead, hanging on in for all he's worth. This is the man who dominated the early rounds of the championship. Pinkney having a look at Sugden. Sugden, 32 years old, professional racing driver, drove in the British Touring Car Championship a while back. Big gap to 4. Who's got it? Well, not who we thought. It's Phil Sharp and Brodie there trying conclusions with Chris Boone. Brodie, I think, had a bump up the back, which is what caused him to get sideways and hold up that little group. Johnson, meanwhile, has Sugden, who in turn has Pinkney right with him, and they come up again, using all of the road. It's going to be the last of the late breakers again. Sharp has pulled out quite a respectable lead there. Pinkney's trying to go around the outside. He's managed it once. Will he manage it twice? No way. In fact, by being on the outside, he ended up back where he started in 3rd place. So Johnson up towards the start and finish. Johnson up towards the flag. Next up, Sugden. 3rd place, Pinkney. Who's going to finish in 4th? It's a tight battle. But it opened out a little bit in that last lap. And in 4th place, it was Phil Sharp. Steve Deeks in 5th. That's Johnson, Sugden, Pinkney, Sharp and Deeks, and 10.7 seconds between the top 5.
Had a reasonable start and just managed to pass Tim out the back. And it was a wonderful race, it really was. I'm absolutely delighted.
So Matt Johnson back on winning form and extending his lead in the series to 21 points, ahead of Sugden and Pinkney, the chasing pair. The picturesque venue of Cadwell Park in Lincolnshire hosted round 9. Row 1 was Sugden and Pinkney. Row 2, Johnson and Sharp, and new boy Steve Warburton heading row 3. David Addison takes up the story.
It's Pinkney with pole position, with Johnson alongside him. Series newcomer Steve Warburton shares row 2 with a silver car of Steve Deeks. It's a very hot and sunny day, a good crowd here to watch these glorious sounding Ventos in action. The lights go green and Dave Pinkney's blue car from pole position noses into the lead, with there Matt Johnson looking for a way past him. There's contact and off goes Steve Deeks. A bit of help from Nico Tukkinen in the red Vento. Well, poor old Steve Deeks into the tar wall even before he gets to the first corner. The Silverstone Driving Centre instructor is in effect out of it, and Tukkinen there runs wide. I reckon that his red Vento may well have suffered some sort of damage. Dave Bartram, new to the championship, moves up. Tukkinen has got a problem, could well be a deflating tyre because he runs wide. Pinkney leads then, Johnson 2nd, and 3rd is Stephen Warburton, moving away from the Dunlop Rover Turbo Cup into Ventos. The cars then dive down the hill. Dave Pinkney about to make his way up the mountain. He's breaking away from Johnson, look. Number 16, Matt Johnson there in 2nd place. 3rd is Warburton, and 4th is Tim Sugden, who, like Dave Pinkney, is a former British touring car competitor. They go up the mountain, through Hall Bends, approaching the hairpin. Pinkney it is up front. 2nd then is Matt Johnson. Look back to see there, number 2, Andy Kramer, squeezing up the inside. Right behind him, as they make their way down towards the final corner, is Robert Ross. But Pinkney is pulling away all the time. Both he and Johnson shared a dead heat at Donington earlier on in the season, and Dave Pinkney, who scored his first championship Vento victory at the start of the season, leads here. Now looking replay at the start. Tukkinen's red car goes for a gap up alongside Deeks, who tries to move across. There's contact. Steve Deeks is speared across the circuit and zonk into the tar wall. And that did Tukkinen's car a power of no good as well. He struggles round into retirement. An effort there being made on the inside. Robert Ross trying to squeeze his way back up through the order. Andy Kramer ahead of him, the ex-Honda racer. But here is Dave Pinkney breaking away all the time now, I reckon, from Matt Johnson. Still there 3rd is Stephen Warburton. The cars hop their way through that little chicane, then up the hill, over the mountain. They go light there, briefly airborne. And Pinkney it is who still leads. Puff of tar smoke breaks very, very late indeed. A real driver's circuit, Cadwell Park. And there is Tim Sugden, 4th at the moment. They make their way out of the Hall Bends, through the hairpin, and here across the line. Past the pits goes Pinkney in the lead. Johnson still there 2nd. Warburton 3rd, breaking away now from Sugden, who's starting to look a little bit lonely. The man from Bradford, all on his own at the moment. He did win at Brands Hatch, but here he's down in 4th position, and Dave Pinkney continues to lead. There is Tim Sugden, a man who desperately wants to get himself back into British Touring Car Championship racing, and if he can, with a works team. He drove last year for the Toms Toyotas. It wasn't really a very successful season for him. At the moment, he's struggling, it seems, to stay in touch with Stephen Warburton. In 5th place, number 1, Chris Boone. 6th is Andy Kramer. 7th there is Robert Ross. And 8th is Jane Cheffings. Squeal of tires, that's Hiroki Ferrosi, I reckon it is. The Japanese translator has spun the ex-Colin Wells car, and he's now got to translate his agricultural excursion into the tarmac once more. Pinkney at the bottom of the mountain, turns left, turns right, goes back on the power, and over the rise he will now go. There is Kramer and Robert Ross having their battle still. Kramer runs wide, kicks up the dust, and Pinkney has gone a-missing. Out of sight, Dave Pinkney has come to grief. So, up into the lead goes Matt Johnson. Second is Warburton. Third now is Tim Sugden, and he looks a little bit closer to the two ahead. So I rather fear that Dave Pinkney has taken himself out of the race. Certainly we see no more of him, and I don't really reckon it was a mechanical problem. I fear that Pinkney has made a mistake. The top three then, making their way once more through the first corner, and there you can see Kramer desperately trying to fend off Robert Ross. The two were side by side going in towards Charlie's. He manages to hang on to the place though. Robert Ross all over the back of Kramer. As toward us come the top three, looking a little bit closer now. Stephen Warburton, who would rather like to win a Vento race, this only his second time in a Volkswagen VR6, is there up behind Johnson. Third is Tim Sugden. Warburton turning left, then right, clipping the curb as they make their way up over the top of the mountain. Sugden still chasing after them, but I reckon he's lost a little bit of time now. The top two, Johnson and Warburton, once again are pulling away from Sugden. Now Sugden's in no great pressure there. Fourth, all on his own, is Chris Boone some way back. Up into fifth place though now is Robert Ross. Down to sixth is Andy Kramer. And seventh, the green Vento, that of Jane Cheffings, having her best ever showing in the championship. Although it's rather ironic that it should come today, which could well be her last race due to financial constraints. The top three making their way uphill once again. Now what can Steve Warburton do about Matt Johnson? It looks as though Matt has got this pretty much under control. He desperately wants to extend his advantage in the championship. He, like Warburton, looking at the Vento series as perhaps a springboard to moving up into the British Touring Car Championship. Tim Sugden has been there. He knows all about it and how difficult it is to get there and keep a drive. Over the top of the hill they go. Now, through the Hall Bend, into the hairpin, you can see that Johnson is being caught once more by Warburton. Chris Boone fourth, being caught slowly but surely now by Robert Ross. The leaders make their way over the line. Dave Pinkney, no doubt, kicking himself after going off earlier on. Steve Deeks ruefully watches the top three go past and wonders also what might have been if he hadn't tangled with Truckinen at the start. There is Warburton, really going at everything he's got. The gap between those two Ventos continues to fluctuate with, I reckon, on this lap, Warburton just a little bit further back. Up the hill they go once more. Still Matt Johnson being able to control the race from the front. Look back, Chris Boone still in fourth place. Fifth there is Robert Ross, and Ross the man to watch, but so too worth watching is Jane Cheffings. She has a look on the inside of number two Andy Kramer, can't find a way past, but the ex-Alfa Romeo 164 racer Jane Cheffings is glued to the back of Kramer's car now. Third, fourth and fifth, Sugden. Number one, Chris Boone in the Barwell Motorsport prepared car, and then Robert Ross make their way up over the top of the mountain. Through the Hall Bends, Warburton again absolutely on the ragged edge, kicking up the dust there. Desperately keen to try and move ahead if he can. Tim Sugden still in third place, as up to the line they come once more for the lead. Warburton's running out of options, I reckon, now, if he wants to move ahead of the race leader Matt Johnson. All the time, Tim Sugden is falling further and further behind. The ex-Toyota and BMW British Touring Car racer watches Steve Warburton, a former member of the Castrol Honda Scholarship Team in Group N, the National Saloon Car Championship of a couple of years ago. They climb uphill once more, they break, and Tim Sugden, holding this watching brief, I reckon may now have settled for points. The last thing that Sugden wants to do is get involved in any sort of scrap that will risk him finishing. He's second in the championship and needs to get points. He knows how to win championships. So it looks as though Sugden may well have settled for third place, but Warburton has certainly not settled for second. Really on the ragged edge again, clipping curb, bouncing up over them, kicking up the dust, and now out of the Hall Bends he comes. In this heat, all the drivers really are going to earn their points at the end of the race. It's a very gruelling circuit at the best of times, and in this strength-sapping heat here at Cadwell Park today, inside a saloon car, they're going to be absolutely exhausted by the end. It's a circuit where you've got to keep working all the time. Very little chance for you to have a breather. And Matt Johnson continues to have very little breather as far as the pressure is concerned, because Warburton is still there, shadowing his every move. Not quite close enough to attack, but close enough to pick up the pieces should Johnson make an error. Uphill once more. Matt Johnson then, former Renault Clio champion, former Fiesta racer, former Formula Ford 2000 racer. He used to race against JJ Leto, who's since moved on to Grand Prix racing and now the International Touring Car Championship. There in second place is Stephen Warburton. It looks as though Matt Johnson is the master of Ventos at Cadwell Park. Stephen Warburton in second place, Tim Sugden third, and Chris Boone similarly lonely fourth now. Fifth is Robert Ross. What's happening for sixth? Jane Sheffings versus Andy Kramer. They come out side by side and Sheffings goes through. Jane Sheffings moves ahead as they come into the mountain. Brakes very, very late indeed. Deep into the corner, but sorts out the car, hangs on to her newly won place. Andy Kramer there, just ahead of Mark Nicol, virtually pushing him out of the hairpin, saying, come on, hurry up. Matt Johnson looking particularly dominant now. Stephen Warburton no longer able to stay as close as he needs to be to Matt Johnson. The fastest lap went to Dave Pinckney before his retirement, and I wonder whether Johnson is going to be able to get anywhere near that. I suspect not now, as the race comes towards its close. A shot there in the background of Dave Brodie. Dave's struggling here at Cadwell Park. He's in a rather distant 9th place at the moment. And Robert Ross in number 15 doing his best to get up into contention once more with Chris Boone. The leaders make their way left and then right, curb hop their way up the mountain for the final time out of the Hall bends, through the hairpin. Warburton is having a real go, but with only a corner to go, I think he's left it too late. It could well be that, of course, Matt Johnson has relaxed his pace to make sure of success. Here he comes to further increase his lead in the championship. Victory at Cadwell Park goes to Matt Johnson. In second place across the line, Stephen Warburton. Tim Sugden comes through third, being caught there right at the end by Chris Boone. And in fifth position there is Robert Ross. And Sugden, fortunate perhaps to just hang on to that third place. Confirmation of the results. Johnson from Warburton, from Sugden, the top three. Boone fourth, Robert Ross fifth, and in sixth place, a tremendous result for Jane Sheffings. So Matt Johnson returns to the start and finish line, takes off his helmet, takes off his balaclava, about to receive his garland and trophy from Rose Gray, the secretary of the meeting here at Cadwell Park. And Johnson manages to pull further away from the rest of them in the championship. And that is great news.
Cheers. Today we had a great car as always. I'm not sure what happened to Dave Pinckney. He led away for the first lap. I think he ran wide up the top there and damaged his car, which obviously gave me the lead. But absolutely wonderful. It's a great series, and I'm delighted to have won. And the championship looks pretty good now.
It does indeed. Johnson increases that advantage over Tim Sugden, with Dave Pinckney a rather distant third now. Chris Boone is fourth, and Dave Brodie hanging on in there in fifth.
Round 10 of the series was at Snetterton, and by round 11 at Castle Combe, Matt Johnson only had to finish first or second to take the title. We rejoin Neville Hay.
They're away, a great start there by Dave Pinckney. And Matt Johnson coming into contact with another car there. And Johnson, the leader, is off. He's in the sand. If he gets out again, he's going to start a long way back, and that's not going to do his points any good, as Sugden's in the lead. On the inside of him there, it's Pinckney. Pinckney slithering through on the inside. There's Brodie trying to make his way up from a bad practice position. There was still damage on that car from the Snetterton accident in practice, and they've actually been working on it overnight to straighten out the axle at the rear. Also going well there, 36 Steve Warburton, the refugee from the Rovers, a 21 years old Worcester student. But it's Pinckney in the lead, Sugden behind him, the top two coming in here. Hiroki Ferruzzi up in third place and sliding through there on the inside, number 15. Big effort being made by Robert Ross. And Sugden really pushing very hard. There's Brodie with the red car, number 10. That car is definitely going much better. Let's look back at the start and see what happened. And it looks as if it was, in fact, Hiroki Ferruzzi who clipped initially that car of Matt Johnson. Everybody else avoided him. And the battle at the front only overshadowed perhaps by this battle that's going on here, with Brodie trying to work his way through, Warburton in front of him, Robert Ross in front of him, and Brodie anxious to get ahead of those two cars. Looking here, outside, the inside, every way, which way but lose. Being careful that Steve Deeks doesn't creep up on him as well. Back a bit, Chris Boone today, not going perhaps as well as expected. 3 wheels on his wagon. It's Pinkney in the lead, holding off the challenge from Sugden, with Ferrucci some way back, and still Dave Brodie trying to work his way past these cars, but looking as if he might have nicked a place there. There is Sugden, falling back a little bit from Pinkney on this lap. On go the brakes, clipping the bank there, up comes the dust a little bit. And Sugden has dust again thrown at his windscreen. Coming out now on the far side of the circuit, and here's the battle now, with Brodie having forced his way to the front of that group of cars on Ferrucci's tail, slots himself into 4th place there. Warburton suffering as a result of that manoeuvre, down to 5th. And this is a big effort by Brodie. Tries the outside. There was a gap a mile long on the inside, but Brodie couldn't get there. 51 years old, very competent indeed, been racing saloon cars for a very long time, and very anxious to get that 3rd place of its occupant, Hiroki Ferrucci. Ferrucci, with not as much experience in these cars as Brodie, doing a splendid job keeping him at bay, although Pinkney now has pulled out quite a good lead from Sugden. And that seems to be a pretty safe 1st and 2nd situation. That battle for 3rd and 4th is the one to keep an eye to. Leaders coming towards us. We look up to see the 3rd, 4th place battle just coming through in the same order behind. Sugden, a refugee from the British Touring Car Championship, not having really a great time, and somebody there has got a few problems. It's Matt Johnson. Really, that car not going well after that bump at the start. He's limping round, trying just really for points, and points are precious items as far as he's concerned. Ferrucci still holding off the challenge from Brodie, and Warburton right up there. There's some more good fights going on. That's Boone on the inside there, desperate to make a place. Mark Nicol, the man who's suffering most. And now falling back a little bit, Warburton, as he watches what's happening, has a look at the outside there. I think he feels that there's an impending disaster ahead of him and wants nothing to do with it. Robert Ross has a good view of this as well, but he's got his own problem there with somebody hard on his tail. That looks like Steve Deeks, who's pressuring him very hard. And Boone still holding off Nicol. Boone looks at the inside there. Here comes Brodie. A little bit of a tap there, was there, but certainly not intentional. Went for a gap, but realised it wasn't there, but has a really good go as they come out now. Tries, looks at the outside. On the inside, he finds Mr. Warburton, which rather spoils his fun. And Warburton fighting back, looks as if he might get the 4th place. But Brodie gets it back again. And Brodie making a last effort here to try and close that gap. Raises the dust. Deeks right behind. Tremendous battle going on here for 3rd, 4th, 5th, 6th, 7th, 8th, 9th and 10th. Nobody wants to finish last. 2 wheels on the grass, Brodie trying again. Deeks right with them as well. On the grass, leaping up into the air and down again there. Number 11, Mark Nichols, lost himself a lot of ground and his front spoiler and bumper by the look of it. And that split that group up at the back a little. As Brodie makes another effort here, looks at the inside. This is it. He's got the inside, goes through. Warburton trying to go through with him. And he does. But here comes the leader. There's the checkered flag. Under win then for Dave Pinkney from Tim Sugden, with Brodie hanging on in there. And there's a problem for Brodie on the line. Brodie loses that third place to Hiroki Ferrucci, who gets it. Brodie still finishes fourth ahead of Warburton as they go to the presentation. But that was really disaster for Dave Brodie after a brilliant drive from the back of the field. But with 1 round to go, it's going to be down to the line, because if Pinkney can beat Johnson in the last race, he's going to go from third in the championship to first. Sugden can do no more. He's got no more scores to drop.
And so to the final round of the series at Silverstone. Matt Johnson had to finish first or second to improve his championship score and guarantee himself the series. The only man that could beat him was the fast-starting Dave Pinkney. Pinkney had to win, while Sugden was still in the battle for second position.
The blue car there, fighting it out for the lead, is the man who everybody thinks could take the championship, David Pinkney. He's challenging hard on the tail and pressuring for all his worth, Tim Sugden. And it's Sugden in the lead. Pinkney next up. And everybody looking out for the man who's dominated the championship heretofore, Matt Johnson, who is certainly much further back than we'd anticipated he would be. The international circuit at Silverstone. See these cars come down towards us for the first time. Sugden locking up there, takes a tight line. And car number 1, Chris Boone, a bit further back than he'd like to be. But at the moment, Johnson not figuring in the top 2. Now, he has got to get himself into the top 4 to take this championship. Equally, it has got to be won by the blue car there, number 55 of David Pinkney. The race has to be won, and he has to have the fastest lap if he's to have a chance. And the tantalizing sight ahead of him is the ex-British touring car driver Sugden, who currently holds the lead, and Pinkney tries every way, which way, and doesn't lose out this time, gets alongside, comes for a tighter apex as they come out, and pulls alongside, and takes the lead, I think, as they come down now towards Beckett's. Here he comes. Pinkney snatches the lead from Sugden into Beckett's corner, and they set off on the new section of the international circuit through these teasing S's, which has made quite a bit of difference to racing here at Silverstone, and up towards this tight Abbey corner with Pinkney in the lead, Sugden in second place, and Johnson still a little bit further back than he'd like to be. In the midst of all that, some good battles going on behind. Jane Sheffing's there with the green card, the only lady in the race. And now up to third place there. A good battle going on between number 16, Matt Johnson, and number 36, Stephen Warburton. Warburton, the refugee from the Rovers, pressuring Johnson, because Johnson needs to stay there in third place. Second would be even more desirable. And Warburton, 21 years old, Worcester Technical College student engineer, has no doubt seen Dave Brodie's car stopped at the side of the road, having had a collision. No real harm done to those two. As we look at number 99, Dave Bartram. Here's the battle now, beginning to settle down as we move now into the later stages of the race, with Johnson having cut the gap between himself and Sugden, and well ahead of them both is the blue car of David Pinkney, but Johnson desperately wants that second place. Warburton, you will see in the background, has fallen back On the skyline, we saw Pinkney's car. Here is Pinkney in the lead, but the one thing he needs to see, like a hole in the head behind him, is the white car of Johnson takes second place, which will ensure that Johnson gets the championship. It's off and out for number 33, Steve Deeks. And as Pinkney goes on his winning way, cocking a wheel at the opposition, we see another departure there in the shape of number 3, Rick Kramer. In and out of the gravel, showering it all over the road as he sets off. As into the pits comes the sad sight of Tim Sugden out of the race, which means that up to second place, and now unassailably, effectively winning the championship, is Matt Johnson, with behind him Warburton. The winner of the race is going to be Pinkney, but it's Johnson who's going to take the championship, and Warburton can chase him for all he's worth, but it's not going to happen. As here comes Pinkney through this teasing section at Silverstone, with the man in second place, about to be crowned champion, 29 years old, Matt Johnson from Ruislip in Middlesex. Very much a one-make specialist, has dominated this championship in the early part of the season, but has had quite a struggle in the latter part. That race at Castle Combe almost robbed him of championship honours, but he didn't, because Pinkney won, but Johnson finished second and takes the championship for 1996. Warburton third, Boone fourth, Phil Sharp in fifth place, but the points position with the champion finishing in second place sees Johnson with a bare 2 points, but that's enough to win the championship from Pinkney.
I made it rather difficult for myself. The inside line obviously is a bit damp today, and I got a terrible start, to be honest, and David and Tim went off into the distance, and I had a problem with Warburton. He hit me a few times and I dropped back to fourth, and then Deeks over the back dived down the inside and I was in fifth, and at the same time David Pinkney got past Tim, and I was in a terrible situation. It was an absolute disaster, but thankfully I got it back, got past Warburton and Deeks, etc., and managed to attack Tim and got past him over the back. He defended very tough, but I just dived down inside. We did touch, but it was as fair as you can be.
Congratulations then to Matt Johnson. A terrific performance after 12 races across the UK during the season. Johnson by 2 points, the 1996 Esso Ultron Vento VR6 champion.